IVF1 uses WriteSignature.com, which is an online document signing service. This allows our patients to sign consent forms at home without having to come to the office, but be assured that it is secure and private. Both you and your partner will receive an email. Click the link in the email to open the document to be signed. There are 3 tools to help you make sure that you have completed the document correctly. The first in the upper right-hand corner is the progress bar. As you are completing initials and signatures, the progress bar will advance until, of course, you reach 100%. Just below that is a yellow navigation bar. If you have an open item that requires either initial or signature, by clicking on the underlined portion, it will automatically take you to that particular area of the consent. And a third is a pink indicator arrow that's here in the left margin. By clicking this will also take you to an area that you need to either initial or sign. Here it says required, but if you were further up, it would tell you to scroll down, and if you were too far, if you had missed something, it'll tell you to scroll up. And again, by clicking on this indicator will take you to the place that initials are required. The in vitro fertilization consent is a package of several individual consents and agreements. These are listed here. The pages in which these agreements and consents can be found is on the right. A staff member will have marked for each partner who will need to sign which portions of the IVF consent. You will notice that at the bottom of each page of the consent form is an area for a signature. Do not put your signature here until the consent is completed. There are many choices to be made in the IVF consent form that will require initials. If you place your signature here before those initials are completed, it will prevent you from making those choices, and we will need to send you a new consent and you will have to start all over again. I will repeat, do not put your signature at the bottom until you reach the last page of the consent. The first consent in the IVF package is the medications consent. Only the female who is attempting pregnancy will need to read and sign this consent. This consent is 3 pages long. Please read it carefully. If you have any questions, you send us an email or call. On the bottom of page 4, you see a box to type your initials. If you understand everything, type your initials there, and then you can proceed to the next section. The next consent is the egg retrieval consent. Only the female who is having the egg retrieval needs to sign this consent. Again, there is a box on the bottom to type your initials. You can then scroll down to the embryo transfer consent, and again, this is a short consent. Read through it and type your initials at the bottom. The next section begins on page 7, and this is the consent which reviews the risks of IVF and IVF laboratory procedures. This section is several pages long. Be sure that both partners read and understand this section completely. If you have questions, email or call the office. On the bottom of page 10, you will see the familiar area to place your initials. Both partners will need to initial here. However, only one partner will be able to initial with each email login. You can see the little flag here, which indicates that this was accessed through the female's email address. If this was the partner's email address, the arrow would be on the other side. You cannot put emails in for your partner without logging in through your own email link. On pages 11 through 13, you will find the IVF cycle agreement. This portion of the consent tends to be confusing, so you may want to watch this section of the video and then pause, go to the consents and complete that part, and then come back and listen to the video again. This may help you avoid any mistakes or confusion. Please note, some areas of the consent may have information that you need to type in. These text boxes will only be found on the female login, not on the partner side. Subsection 1, Egg Source. Look at the name. If a female is providing her own eggs for the IVF cycle, then her name should appear here. If you are using an egg donor, then the donor name or donor code should appear here. Both partners must initial on this subsection. Pause the video here, sign the consent, and then return to the video. Number 2, sperm source. If the male partner is providing his own sperm for the IVF cycle, his name should appear in line A, and you must each initial by line A. If, however, you are using donor sperm, please type in the donor code as well as the sperm bank, and then each initial on that line only. Do not initial on both lines. Pause the video here, complete the consent, and then return. Number 3, discard policy. Please read the IVF-1 discard policy and each initial, then return to go to the next section. Fertilization method. There are 2 methods to fertilize eggs in IVF. Learn about them in this first paragraph. The official policy of IVF-1 is to recommend ICSI for all our patients. Read the second paragraph to learn why. Not all insurance companies will pay for ICSI. Our staff has determined whether your insurance will cover ICSI, and if so, under what circumstances. You may use this information to determine whether to perform ICSI in the next section. Here, the staff has made a recommendation to perform ICSI only on line A. If you agree to have ICSI performed, then you will each initial on the first line only. If you would prefer another option, then you will initial on that line only. Pause here. Number 5, pre-implantation embryo testing, or PGD. If you are not having PGD done, then each initial on line A. If you are having PGD, then you will each initial on line B. There are also additional choices for type of biopsy and analysis method. The staff will indicate where you should mark, but it is important for you to verify by checking in the checkbox on each selection. Number 6, embryo transfer. For each IVF cycle, there is a choice between transferring the embryos right away or fresh transfer, freezing all of the embryos, or freezing only if necessary due to a specific reason. The staff will have made a recommendation. In this case, we're recommending 2 embryos for a fresh transfer. If you are in agreement, then simply type the number of embryos transferred and place your initials. If you don't want to transfer the number that is recommended, you may choose a lower number. You may not choose a higher number. If there is a specific reason for freezing, there will be a text box that will allow you to indicate what that reason is. Pause here and then return. Number 7, plan for extra embryos. If you have more embryos than are going to be transferred, you must indicate what to do with those extra embryos. There are 3 options. Option 1 is to have those embryos frozen for your own future use. Option 2 is to dispose of the remaining embryos. And option 3 is to donate extra embryos for use by another infertile couple. The staff will have made, again, a recommendation. If you are in agreement, initial by that line only. You may pause here and then return when you are done. Number 8, data collection. IVF-1 is required by the CDC to report the outcomes of all IVF cycles. please read this paragraph here and then initial acknowledging the data collection policy. Read the final 2 paragraphs and then initial below to complete the cycle agreement. Pause here. The final consent is the plan for extra embryos. If you agreed to cryopreservation of embryos above, you must complete this consent. Otherwise, you may skip to the end to complete your signature. If you agreed to freeze embryos, please read this page carefully to learn about the IVF-1 policies and requirements for frozen embryos. If embryos are frozen, you and your partner must indicate to IVF-1 what to do in the event that one or both of you pass away while embryos are frozen. In the first section on the bottom of the page, you will indicate what to do if either partner dies while embryos remain frozen. Option A is to thaw and dispose of the remaining embryos, and option B is to allow the surviving partner to have sole custody and the undisputed right to determine the disposition of any remaining frozen embryos. Discuss this with your partner, choose one line only, and then you may go to the next section, which tells us what to do in the event that both partners should die while the embryos are frozen. In this case, the choices are to donate the extra embryos to our program for use by another couple, or to have the remaining embryos thawed and discarded. Again, choose one choice, initial on that line. And to complete the plan for extra embryos, there is one further spot for your initials. Finally, if you've completed the entire consent, we are ready to go to the signature. Finally, after you've completed the entire consent and placed all your initials where appropriate, you're ready to sign the consent form. Clicking in the signature box will open up a signature pad. Simply use your mouse by clicking and dragging to sign your name. Don't worry if your signature does not look like your regular written signature. It is still considered legally binding. Once you're done, click the Preview Signature button, and then you are done.